Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me for the second time Tom Hutchison. So, welcome back.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I am very excited because obviously we're going to be talking a lot about the Wizard of Oz, and in particular, the Legend of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West, and the Age of Ozma. Part 2 just sort of is kickstarting. Part 1, I know you just got them in last week. And so those are starting to get into that entire position being shipped out. But before we get into all of the Kickstarter and what's going on, let's sort of catch everybody up on Big Dog Inc.'s Wizard of Oz. Because your version of Wizard of Oz is very different than something like the traditional or a Zenescope or even Scotty Young's marvelous Land of the Wizard of Oz. So what is your version exactly for those who don't know?
Yeah, so our version is basically what's behind me here. It is a Western reimagining of the Wizard of Oz. So instead of ruby slippers, Dorothy's got ruby spurs, ruby bullets. Toto's her horse. This horse is not Toto. This is actually the horse of the Wicked Witch of the West that Dorothy has sort of commandeered after beating the Witch of the West. I don't think that's really a spoiler. We all know that happens. But yeah, it's celebrating its 10-year anniversary this year, which is super exciting. It was the third title that we released through Big Dog Inc. all the way back in 2000. What is it then? 2011 is when it came out. And it's always been a super popular book, and it's also been a really good sort of gateway product for us, because even though people don't know what they're looking at as far as like all this design stuff, they understand the term Oz, and so they can come in and see the big banner that says Legend of Oz, and they can be like, oh, so what is this Oz thing that you have? And then it's just an instant icebreaker. Oh, here it is. It's this, and let me show you the book, and so on. So it's been really great to do it over 10 years. We're doing a complete story arc this year through Kickstarter. The first one we did in January. The second one is live right now with about a week, maybe it's like 10 days left, I guess. But if you haven't read the book before, if you are considering diving in, we have tiers on the Kickstarter that lets you get caught up on the entire series if you want to, or even just the last few issues to kind of just give it a little tryout.
Yeah, and before we get into that, I do want to talk a little further more about Oz, because you have a very different interpretation of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the lion is freed by Dorothy and maybe is a little bit cowardly, but is not so much cowardly. Obviously, we have sort of the local lawman is the version of the Tin Man, and we have that coming out, so slight modification there. The Scarecrow is a mute girl, from my understanding, and obviously she has straw golden hair is kind of the tie-in. Obviously, Toto's a horse versus a dog. And then also you got a bunch of new takes on Jack Pumpkinhead, Sawhorse, Ginger, Pip, and a few others. And the Emerald City is not what it seems to be. And, well, they sort of have to do a bunch of freeing. And, well, there's a lot more Wild West thrown into all of this. And so if you are into Westerns and things of that nature, and obviously you want a different interpretation, this is kind of where all this is going. And so what was that like? Because you know a lot of Oz, and obviously a bunch of people are huge Oz fanatics, and then getting to have your own spin on it is very cool at the same time.
Sure. There's been a ton of Oz adaptations into different things over the years, but most of them, with really rare exception, all kind of tend to go off and just do their own thing. Like, it's just like, hey, we're going to take these characters and we're just going to run that way, and we're going to jump out of the box that Baum made and just do it however we're going to do it. For my book, I wanted everything that I did, even though it was being modified and switched up and turned into a Western sort of steampunk thing. I wanted the stories to always ground themselves in Baum's work. He wrote 14 books before he passed on the writing reins to Ruth Plumley Thompson. So everything that you see from in my stories, in tone and texture, in characterization and so on, it all comes from Baum. Even though you're going to get these weird twists, some more dramatic than others, it all should still have a sense of it came from Baum. Now, obviously, if you haven't read the books, none of that matters because you're just getting what you're getting at that point. But the goal was to be able to, you know, wrangle the pure Oz fans, the people that like the Garland movie and the books, like that's what they consider like the holy grails of Oz. I wanted to be able to latch onto them and be like, look, yeah, it's different, but if you read it and you kind of give it the opportunity, you're going to see where it came from. And that was equally as important as just being able to present something new to the comic book world as like, hey, here's a new version of Oz that no one's ever seen before. To my knowledge, I've never seen anything like this in any Oz adaptation. So it was a two-pronged attack, and so far so good.
Yeah, and you are obviously staying somewhat true to the book, and as you stated, the world of Oz that Baum created. And this is kind of leading into the Kickstarter, and obviously we're on the second part of that, but we're dealing with Ozma and her reign. And that's sort of the second and third book, is that, well, sort of Dorothy comes back, and well, Ozma is sort of, you know, the quest for the true Queen of Oz, and somebody to replace the wizard, who sort of goes back with Dorothy. And then obviously Ozma's having a whole bunch of, you know, things to deal with. So what was that like in bringing in Ozma and making that decision? Because you could have gone in 15 different directions, and staying in Baum's world and sort of restructuring and even skipping Ozma and going on to the third, fourth, and fifth book, and kind of what's going on with that entire world of Dorothy, and when eventually she moves into Oz with her aunt and her uncle and that world and all that stuff. But what made you want to almost do it like in the order of the books versus something else?
Well, the whole structure, and I mean, nothing that we do is adapting book by book. Like the first volume is more or less just the Wizard of Oz, but it definitely overlaps into the next two books. That's why we have Ginger in the first volume and so on. So there's definitely a lot of story overlapping. And that was basically just to dive into the world a little harder, a little faster than, you know, we already know. It's one of these things that, like when we do movies for these superhero characters, we already know. It's like we always get these friggin' origins, and I'm like, dude, guys, we know this already. I want to know the stuff we don't know. And most people didn't know who Ginger was. Most people didn't know who the Gnome King was, and so on. So I wanted to kind of move towards that stuff a lot faster, while still telling my own story within the bullet points of Baum. The whole story that I had lined up basically from the beginning was to run through Baum's Ozma story, which we modified. Obviously, it's kind of heavily in some ways, but she's such an important character, especially if you are talking about getting to the end of this storyline and then having something to kind of push forward. And I don't want to give spoilers as to how I'm going to end the storyline, but she was important to have. I mean, you can't just have Mombi running around without Tip. You can't have Tip running around without, you know, leaning that into Ozma, so on and so on. So when we got to this point, it was just the natural progression of the story. It's time to find Ozma. It's time to get the Gnome King going and doing his thing. But obviously, through all of this, we have Ginger. Ginger's helping release the Gnome King. We don't really know why yet. We have inklings as to why. And so it's all just kind of lots of mystery surrounding Ginger and what she's trying to do. The Gnome King, when he wakes up and gets out of his prison, what's he going to do? Ozma we all know Ozma transforming from Tip is a huge story point that allows you to really go deep in some character stuff, which I'm really enjoying right now. I'm really enjoying writing sort of her reemergence as Ozma, but still being linked to the years that she spent as Tip. It's a really cool thing to write and put together. And with the addition of we brought Ozma back a different way than Baum did, that anybody has ever in any situation. Outside, I mean, the Return to Oz brought her back, but that was kind of lame how they did that. In our way, I used Baum's world that he created, but like I said, it's just overlapping stories. So the story point that he created that we used to bring Ozma back was and I'm not even going to spoil it. I'm going to let people get the story and figure out how it works. It was a story point that he created for something else that still worked within the context of what I was trying to do to bring Ozma back. And in doing so, we also added an extra layer to Ozma because we'll put a slight spoiler out into the world. She now can only tell the truth after that she has now come back as Ozma. So there's all kinds of really cool layers to Ozma. There's all kinds of cool layers to the interaction between Gnome King and Ginger. There's so much going on, and we're really at a point now where we're going to kind of deviate more than we ever have from Baum's books. At this point now, it's really my story. It's still gonna pull from what he did, but from this point, this Age of Ozma arc to, I don't know, about issue 30, 35, something like that. This is really my story now. This is the culmination of everything that I built and was aiming for from the very beginning. And when we get to that end, we will have a finale to all of this. But again, we want to have a finale that allows for forward steps if we were to decide to keep going, and Ozma would be a huge part of that.
So just to even back up a little bit, because I do want to give people context, what issue number is this entire arc going to end at, so people know to get a sense? Because I know that because what wound up happening with the first 2 volumes of the Oz series is that some issues weren't published and then they were tabled, and we spoke about it the last time. And this is 4 issues, and then how many more stories are we going to have till we get to issue 30, 35 error territory?
Well, this issue is technically 2 issues together because it's a 40-page issue. So this book is technically issues 22 and 23 kind of put together. And then the book that we do in October to finish this arc will be 24, 25. And then we have about another 10 issues or so roughly to get to kind of where this whole story kind of comes together, ties itself up in some knots and finishes. So we got a ways to go, and there's nothing that says that 35 is the final landing spot for this. If I need to go further, we'll go further, but there is an ending to all of what I began, which is kind of the key. And once we get there, then we have to kind of decide, okay, so here we are at the end of this large story. What is the next step? Is it the Scarecrow? Is it Ozma? Is it the Tin Man? Is it Jack? Because the world is so vast, and we will only have touched on like the first really maybe 3 books overall. That there's so much to do, whether we follow Baum or whether we just do it on our own.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask that is that I want people to understand that when they're investing into it, because I'm a big proponent that I like to watch shows and I like to read books that have big worlds. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to spend time with characters, I'll give an example. I'm a big Avatar: The Last Airbender fan. I love that main show. Then the Kyoshi's books came out. Then the graphic novels came back. And then we have an entire world of Korra. So we have about 600 years of content. And now Nickelodeon, and I know it's slightly different than the comics, but I think it gets the idea across where Nickelodeon...
Well, that's similar because even in our case, we've done spinoffs already. Like we did a Scarecrow miniseries, which kind of told some early Scarecrow stories. We did a TikTok miniseries, which was a direct sort of parallel side story to some of the stuff that we'd already done. So yeah, no, it's very much like that. And if you haven't read Oz, you can get everything that we've done. If you want to dive all the way in on this Kickstarter, you can do it. We have volumes 1 through 4 available. The spinoffs are available. It's all there if you want to go all in.
We're going to talk all about this.
Yeah.
I got pictures and everything to show every cover, and because I love it. I'm a cover guy. But before we get into that, I do want to talk a little bit about Ozma and the Gnome King. Yep. And I think this picture sort of sums it all up, where this is, hopefully it's shooting up. There we go, because that's kind of what we got going on, with some crazy stuff going on who's who and what's what.
Yeah, so you got Ginger there watching. This is right after the Gnome King basically is released from his prison. That's Ginger there in the green and yellow, and Gnome King's kind of walking off. Basically, he's off to see the wizard right now after being in his prison for like 100 years.
So what was this like in building out this character design and even having something in mind? Because that's something about your Oz, that we get those Western elements and we get awesome art and we get awesome cover art and we get really cool character designs that are recognizable but are also slightly different,
Sure.
and that take a new interpretation. And you have some amazing artists working with, and we're going to talk about a bunch of them. And I could just mention Nia Ruffino is kind of the standard in my mind of who you bring in to do a lot of work and have really helped to build out the art side of this story. So what was that like, designing all these characters and making sure that it hits the spot? Because when people see this looks awesome. Just from that one photo I've shown, I think people are like, oh man, this is like how Oz should look.
Yeah, we've had Rob Duenas helped with the original designs of Dorothy, Tin Man, the Witch of the West, when we still had her around, the Lion, and so on. Jen Broomall came in, helped with a lot of characters, General Ginger, Glinda. She did help design Ozma as well. She's designed stuff you guys haven't even seen yet. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that is right there. It's ready to go. We just have to get to that point in the story. That guy, if you want to put that back up again real quick, that one dude that you see down there in the bottom corner, and he's also the guy on the far left. He's a new character that was introduced in the last issue. For those that know Oz, there was a character known as the Long-Eared Hearer, but he didn't have a name. He was just the Long-Eared Hearer, and he worked kind of with the gnomes. And I was kind of fascinated with that. He was just kind of this standalone dude, and I was like, I need to put him in this book, but I need to find a way to make him valuable beyond just being the long-eared hearer. And I started to think about, like, why is he long-eared? What is the significance of that? I couldn't really find any massive descriptions of him. But as I was doing my Oz research, there's of course it's Bunnyville, something like that. Where basically there's these rabbits that, like real rabbits, that inhabit this world down by Glinda in the southern area of Glinda. And so basically I was like, well, there's rabbits, they have long ears. What if the long-eared hearer was part of this Bunnyvale crowd of people? And from there, Carlos Reno designed him. He's the actual series artist that you saw right here. He designed him. And then we let the people on our Patreon group actually name him, give him a real name. So we wouldn't just call him the long-eared hearer all the time. So his name is Beauregard. And he is now the first appearance of the Bunnyville crowd down south. So between that and then the Gnome King obviously just needed to be a big rock dude. I mean, that's what he is. So there really wasn't anything that we needed to do to be weird about him. I mean, all the gnomes and everything are just these rock guys, you know, and so we just needed him to look kind of imposing, regal in some capacities. So he's got some, like, you know, red and blue and you know, kind of jewels on him as well. He's got that staff, that emerald staff right there. So he was pretty easy to design because, hey, we need a big rock dude, you know, and make him look like a king. So that was easy. Everyone else, you know, and I wouldn't even say that everything else was hard, but everything else we really wanted to find a look, because like with Ginger, we knew, okay, Ginger's going to be wearing this suit, you know, for most of the time that we see her. So we need it to be relevant to what we're doing. Glinda changes her clothes, but she does have that Southern Belle aesthetic to her, generally speaking. So again, in her first initial waves, we've got her in the big, you know, flowing dress and all that kind of stuff. So it was really fun to design everything. And every time we have to do it again, it's more fun. We had Quox. Quox was in the issue 2 issues ago. We had Quox first appeared. That was a crazy thing that happened with him. So yeah, so it's fun to be able to drop guys in like Easter eggs, essentially, you know, like when you're watching Marvel movies and stuff, it's like, oh, I know who that guy is in the background. So it's fun to do that. But like in the case of the long-eared hearer, he's actually going to be a main character.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff, and I think that whether you know Oz or you don't know Oz or you know another interpretation of Oz, Fables does a version of Oz. As I stated, Marvel has a version of Oz with Scotty Young. Zenescope has their version, and there's been other people that have done it. There's an entire manga called Toto that has done their version of The Wizard of Oz in a very different way and in a very Japanese way, which is awesome. And then obviously you have Wicked, and that is a very cool, entire version of Oz. I guess the prequel, and it's an adaptation. And so obviously you're staying true and adding new things to it, and just the art is popping off of this. And I think it is super important that if you're just looking for a really cool book to read that legitimately looks like Oz and looks like how Oz should look, this book and these books and the entire Wicked Witch of the West and the Legend of Oz series really does accomplish that.
And this is actually interior art. This is what the book looks like behind me. So Carlos Reno and Gap Melvin are the art team on the interiors for the last few issues. So really happy with what they're doing.
And then on that note, and I figure we should dive into the Kickstarter because I don't want to push too hard on ruining the first issue of the Ozma arc, because that is starting to be pushed out now, because obviously you got them back in last Thursday, I want to say.
Yeah, the books for that it was a January Kickstarter, so the books are being prepped to be sent out to backers. So if you were a backer for the last issue, shipping will be starting probably early next week, so keep your eyes open on your mailboxes.
And so obviously that's going to be cool. And that's why I don't want to ruin too much here, because I want people to actually read that first issue. Obviously the second issue is now pretty much funded. I think you funded pretty quickly.
Oh, we're totally funded. Yeah, we're way past funded.
So obviously that's always a concern with Kickstarter. And I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. The way I view Kickstarter is that when I back a project, that project is budgeted for. Mm-hmm. And so I have to assume that that money's gone. Whether I get charged or not isn't the issue anymore. And so that's how I view Kickstarter, and it's a very different budgeting process for me. But obviously now that this is funded, the book is going to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know that people might be concerned in this day and age of, hey, am I backing this? Is this going to happen? Am I going to miss another project? Well, this book's happening, and the further money it gets, the more stretch goals get unlocked.
Yeah, we have 430 people that have already backed the book, and we have 11 days left. So, we're well into this. But if you haven't pledged, you got 11 days. There's like we said, there's tons of, if you like art, we have art covers. If you like the story, we have story covers. We have a story cover, of course, but we have good stories. You can catch up on the whole series, all kinds of stuff. So very, very easy to get involved.
And then let's talk about this, because I want to talk about the rewards, the covers, a variety of other things that are out there. And there's so many cool things that are out there. And I got pictures, and hopefully my pictures are going to actually coincide with what I'm speaking about. So here you can go from anywhere from $10 on the physical rewards all the way up to over 100 easily. And so obviously I think this is one of those $10 books, I hope.
That is one of the prints that is available.
That's one of the prints, clearly.
Yes,
I'm jumping. That's an interior page for those who are wondering.
A little more Gnome King there.
I think this is the right one right here.
There you go.
Obviously, this is a Carlos Reno cover, and this is $10, and it's pretty cool for a $10 cover. And so what was
and that includes your shipping. So like you can see, it says free US shipping. So if you're in the US, it's $10. That includes your shipping. So it's not like $10 plus $5 more. So it's just a straight up $10.
And so this is something that's out there. And then this is another cover that is a Nei Rufino cover. And obviously I love Nei. I think Nei is fantastic in what she does. And she's developed a lot of stuff in the entire Oz world.
Yeah, so it's a very sort of Night of the Living Dead style with the gnomes rising up out of the muck. It's very cool. Very, very cool.
And so obviously that's a $10 cover, but the real stuff I want to talk about is this cover. Mm-hmm. And this is a Keith Garvey cover. Mm-hmm. And I love Keith Garvey. obviously Keith Garvey has now started to make a name for himself in the entire comic world. He, prior to doing stuff, he was doing a lot of other things and concept art and a lot of pinup work. Obviously, he started to gain a lot of attention about 2 years ago with Zenoscope, and he's been all over the place. And I think this is his first cover with you guys at
This
Big Dog
is this is his third cover with us, actually. Yeah,
This is his very third. New. Very new.
Oh, he's still very new. Yes, very new. But we've been talking to him. We're actually lining him up now to be a regular for us. So on our next few campaigns, he'll be on it. But yeah, this is his first Dorothy Gale cover. He did a Penny for Your Soul cover and he did a Catnip cover previously. But this is his first Oz cover. It's basically his interpretation of Dorothy. It's not exactly our interior version. But that's fine when we do these variant covers, these pin-up art style things. We kind of let the artist kind of have free reign to kind of do whatever they feel like they want to do, as long as it sort of lands in the ballpark of what we have. Like, she's got the blue gloves, she's got the ruby pistols, she's got the hat, the blue colors are there. As long as the basics are there, we're happy to let the artist kind of do their interpretation.
Yeah, and I love this cover. I think this sort of captures that farm girl, Western feel, girl from Kansas, country girl next door type of feel.
100%.
Who doesn't need her father to shoot you if you make the wrong move. And so that's what I get out of this entire book. And I love this book. I personally actually backed this book because I love Garv's work. I think he's great. He was on my show a while back. And he is just fantastic in everything he does. And then to make things even better, and obviously at Big Dog Inc., you provide a lot of choices.
Sure.
This is another book that's out there that I also absolutely love for a variety of reasons as well. And so what's the story behind this cover? Because this is an awesome cover too.
Pedro Perez, we wanted to... It's a tricky thing with comics and especially in this world with the pinup covers and stuff, because we could sit here and just make 10 Dorothy covers and we'd sell them. But I wanted to, just like you showed that first one, that first print was Glinda's Guard. The world of Oz is so vast that, we want to kind of try and get as many of the characters in here beyond Dorothy as we can as well. So like on the last campaign, we had a Cowardly Lion cover. There's General Ginger and so on. So this is really the first Scarecrow cover all by herself since issue 3 started 10 years ago. And I really wanted to get her on her own, kind of showing her personality. She's the Scarecrow, but the crows dig on her. She's like, yeah, let's go. Let's hang out, So this came out so great. Pedro Perez is an amazing artist. This is all him, lines and colors. And I found him last year. We started working with him, and I have not gotten enough out of him. And I even told him, because he's got something he's doing right now. And he's like, well, how long do I have? And I'm like, well, let's put it this way. As soon as you're finished with that one, we'll give you something else to do, because we want to just keep feeding you the work. So he was like, okay, great. So let's get this done.
So to even talk about this, because this, in my view, is softer than the Dorothy. Where the Dorothy is a very stark, it's a very bold, it's a very sharp piece, and it's also very much like I get a sense of aggression. Like this is more like laid back and chilled out and softer, and like it's a whole different art style, and I love that in the two that I've shown so far, where some people might naturally gravitate towards more stark position.
Oh, naturally.
And so it's very cool when you have such diverting art styles.
Yeah, it's art style and it's character. And with Pedro, his part of his thing, and it's across all the stuff he does. When you see the piece and you get it close, and you can kind of see it in there too, there's like a little bit of a blur on it. And it kind of looks like it's an animation cell. It looks like it just came right out of a cartoon. And that's part of what's really, really great about his stuff. It makes it really unique. It's not just that it's art, but it actually looks alive, which is just unbelievable. Love it.
Yeah, and then to continue talking about, and I agree, where that feels like very much Disney-esque. It almost has a Pocahontas feel to it.
Very, yeah.
To some degree. And I think, when people see it, they're like, oh, I feel that. And continuing talking about diverse art style, we got this piece too here, and this is also very different and we have a very cool thing, and we kind of got almost a little bit photo-esque to some degree, with like that background being blurry, and obviously the woman standing front and center. And I'm not exactly sure which character this is, or if we should drop and reveal who this character is, because I don't want to spoil anything too deep yet.
This is Queen Zixie of Ix, and this is Carl Liversidge, who's been doing work for us for a couple of years now as well. He's gotten super popular. Everybody looks forward to his next covers. It's all digital art, but it definitely leans into sort of like a realistic type of art. You can see the depth on it is great. You've got the blur in the back, but you've got like the shadow from the plant on her hip. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic piece. So yeah, Queen Zixie first appeared in our TikTok spinoff series. And this is actually her first ever cover, and she appears in this new story that we're doing now, and will be part of it as we go forward.
And I love this also, where this is very much Josh Byrne's style, in which that's kind of that type of cover. And I love how we get a drop shadow, and also we get, as you stated, that sense of depth. I think it's amazing. And again, it's choice. And I love the fact that there's choice here, because everybody gravitates towards something different.
Sure.
And everybody gravitates towards different artists.
Well, and I've always been an art fan, and I was an art dealer for a while. And so when I do these things, I'm not looking for like a house style. I don't want everything to look the same, especially as we move in and out of different genres. The stuff we do for Critter is not going to be the same stuff we do for Penny for Your Soul. That's not going to be the same stuff we do for Oz. So to be able to move in and out of genre and art style is super important. And people know I pat myself on the back for it. I feel like I've found good people. Obviously we work with established pros, but I've also gone out and found people that aren't professionals yet, and been like, no, you've got something, and I want you part of this. And so yeah.
And then another piece out there is obviously country girl, and obviously I was going to say country cowgirl because that's what it looks like. And this is another awesome piece, and this is very playful, and it's also got that Wild West feel to it. And obviously we kind of have sort of a little bit of a funny scene, but we really capture what it's like down in the country.
Yeah, it's very like old school pinup, like old Gil Elvgren, where he's got the girls doing stuff, and they're like, their dresses get stuck in stuff, or they're stuck in their own lassos. That was kind of the point that we were trying to do here. Artist is Paolo Pantalena. Colors are Chuck Obach. So this was a great one. This was a really fun one to do. We did a book, a country girl cover for the last campaign too. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and it sold really well. So I was like, oh, okay. So people are kind of digging this sort of concept. So let's do another country girl. And we let Paolo do this one. And it's sold really well.
And one of the things about Oz is that you have rules that you might not have for Penny for Your Soul and other things. And it's kind of, you just don't go deep nudity, if at all, in the world of Oz. Versus something like Penny for Your Soul might be slightly different. And so obviously we get this playfulness. I am not a big, topless cover guy per se, for a few reasons. A, they're harder to sell on eBay. Also, you can't really post it on Instagram. And the third point, I guess, is I don't find them to be as playful and as artistic. And I feel like there's something that to leave to the imagination on a cover. And when you make it topless, it takes that imagination component out of it.
Sure.
And so I think that this is kind of that playfulness where I feel like if there was a new cover of this, it would completely defeat the entire purpose of the playfulness and what it's supposed to emulate and, that entire drive. So I like that cover a lot for that reason, where if there was a topless version, it would not be a good cover, in my opinion.
Yeah, even when you do topless covers, they just are different. I mean, you have to approach them differently. It's not a situation where you just take a pose at random and then just be like, okay, well, and now she's topless. It's like, it just doesn't work that way. So even when we do stuff like for Penny for Your Soul, it's very, very specific, like what we're doing in tone and texture and everything. So, but yeah, with Oz, we don't do that stuff. We get playful, we'll do sexy, we'll do girl next door kind of stuff. But nothing's ever over the top with Oz. It's not the point of the book. And so we try and bring like we just talked about, we try and bring a different type of art to Oz, to Critter, to Penny for Your Soul, to Kaiju Epic, to whatever it is that we're doing. And each one has its own set of rules and styles that will, allow to come through.
Yeah, no, and I love it. And more choice, because why not? I love the fact that there's so many covers to choose from. And this is just another one. And obviously we're getting into the General and General Ginger and her friends. And I like the fact that Ginger has an actual cover and that we do get sort of the bad guys to some degree. Sure. It's nice to see the bad guys having their moment in the spotlight too. Too many times the bad guys don't get the attention they deserve. And I think it's fantastic that this is in there. And obviously, it's a really cool cover. I mean, I just love the bottom part of that cover and sort of the light shining up a little bit and how we get that and all three of them and how it's really balanced out. And I know what I want a particular cover out of this, and you've already done the concept with it for Princess vs. Zombies. And I think it would be really cool with this at some point to do a 360 cover.
That is 100% what's happening. Tomorrow, the Glinda side of this will launch as an add-on.
So there you go. So for those who don't know, let's start there. So you did a cover and came up with the concept, and I said at the last time that it's going to be copied. And I'm waiting for it to be copied. I haven't seen it yet, but I think it's coming, where there's this, I guess, 3 covers, and they're not connecting covers. Rather, it's the same cover done by about, I don't know, 3 divided by 360. Wow, I'm really bad at math. 120, right? If you
right.
120 degrees angles. So essentially, if you took 120 degree angles, everybody, and then you rotated it 1, 2, and 3, that's what it looks like on all 3 covers, but it's the exact same cover, but it's not the same cover, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's not the same cover. It's the same moment. And so when you take this cover and you see Glinda to the left, the next cover will rotate so that she is where Ginger is. Ginger will be back where Dorothy is, and so on. And then we'll do the third one. Obviously, Dorothy will be in the front. So you'll get sort of like a Matrix style quick 360 turn, seeing the exact same moment for each of these characters at the exact same time, but from 3 different angles.
And so, hate the spoiler where I might be asking you premature, but when you were building out this cover, was that the intention, or was it a waiting, or was it seeing how much it was going to get funded?
No, 100%. This was the plan. This was the plan, and we knew that it was going to take a little extra time to do these things. So we just decided to use the other 2 pieces as add-ons as we go through the campaign, which is what we'll do. Tomorrow is Glinda, and then the following Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, will be Dorothy, and that'll wrap up the set.
And then even on this, because I know with the Princess vs. Zombies, there is a limited number. Sure. With this set, is there a limited number, or is it just how many?
Everything is limited. Everything that we do on these campaigns is limited to 150 at the most.
So obviously, if you like something, buy it.
Correct. Yeah, we've already got 2 covers that are almost sold out. So, and that's been happening with our campaigns. We've been growing in backer count, which means we're selling more books on the campaign, which means there's fewer and fewer leftovers when the campaigns are over.
And then, obviously, I want to talk about this cover as soon as it pops up. Hopefully, there we go.
And this is the one that is right on the cusp of selling out. I think there are 7 of these left.
And so, obviously, it's Ed Benz and Nia Ruffino.
Yep.
Obviously, if you don't know who Nia is, you really don't know comics. This is a really cool cover. And so, obviously, you heard it. So, obviously, this one is going to be probably the first one to not happen or not be available anymore.
Right.
To back. So that's something to keep in mind. And speaking about that, because I am backing this project, obviously I backed the Keith Garvey. what if people want to get more than just this cover? They don't want to go and get everything, but they say, hey, I want this cover in the Keith Garvey. Is there a way for people to do that so they don't have to wait till backer kit?
Yeah, all they have to do to make sure they get what they want is, so let's say you pledged for this one, the Thunder Rolls. So you have your $25 pledge. And then let's say you wanted the Keith Garvey cover, and that's also $25. All you got to do is go in and make your total pledge amount $50, and then send me a message and say, hey, I pledged for the Thunder Rolls, but I want to add on the Keith Garvey, or I want to add on the Scarecrow, or whatever it is you want to add on. And that way we can keep count of the books as we're going through this and be like, okay, so one is set aside for Andrew, one is set aside for whoever, and that's it. Just basically bump your total pledge amount by whatever you want. If you want 4 other books, bump it by another $100, and then just send me a message. I want these 4 books. They're yours.
And I just want to make that clear to everybody, because obviously this stuff is moving really quickly and people don't want to miss out, and they don't want to wait till backer kit, because if you do, all of a sudden, you could be in a rough position. I will also say this, is that you're not charged until this thing is fully funded. So if your paycheck's coming in a week from now, you could still back right now. And so obviously,
we end May 1st at 11:45 Eastern time. So you won't actually get charged until May 2nd is when they'll start charging cards. And even that's a Sunday. So they might not even start on Sunday. I'm not sure how automated their system is, because they obviously take their weekends off. So it could be even Monday, but basically May 2nd is when cards will start being charged.
And so just for everybody out there, if you're trying to figure out your finances, just really good tip on backing Kickstarters. Backed a lot of them. Got like 10 days to figure out, and you could always add, now and then pay for it later.
Sure.
Because you don't get charged until after the fact. And then there's 2 more covers I want to talk about. And this cover, which we sort of already spoke about, but the difference is that it's greened. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm going to actually, if you want to take that down, I'm going to show you one that we've done. And I'm going to try and get some light on. Oh, you know what? I have a green screen on. It's not going to work. It's going to look really crappy because of my green screen. But basically, it's a foil cover. You can see how it's kind of shiny. Again, really poor lighting, guys. I apologize. And green screen will just absorb it. But basically, it's a holofoil cover. So it's printed on like a silver holofoil paper with a green tint over it. So they're called Emerald editions. These were actually tests that we did the first time. We were like, okay, let's see what this would look like if we gave it like a green tint. And when they came out, everybody lost their minds. They're like, holy cow, these are incredible.
So this is what it looks like.
Yeah. So this is the gist of it, but it'll have a really nice shine. All of that white. Yeah. All of the white areas and the lighter greens will kind of have a nice holofoil sort of rainbow shine coming through them. It's very hard to describe. You really have to kind of see it to understand it. But yeah, the Emerald editions were very popular last time. Actually, the last 2 times we've done them, they were very popular. So they're limited to 50 copies, and we've got 2 of them available on this campaign.
And so obviously that's something that people can pick up as well, and they look awesome. And it's super cool, and I really like that Scarecrow cover. And I'm actually having a hard time figuring out if I should get the regular Scarecrow cover or the hollow green foil cover, because I do like that book. And if I do get that hollow green one, I'm getting it CGC. So just saying, it's out there. But there's other stuff too that is also out there, and there's a bunch of friends and people that and obviously there's a bunch of prints. I prematurely showed one of them, and we sort of spoke about it slightly already, and I'm not exactly sure who did this print, but
that's Paolo Pantalena, the guy who did the Country Girl cover. So this was a cover. This is Glinda's Royal Guard. Paolo did this cover for the previous campaign. So those books are pretty much sold out. So what we do is we do covers for a campaign. And then on the following campaign, we look at the books that are basically sold out, and we take those pieces of art and we turn them into prints, so that people that didn't get the books, you can still get the piece of art if you want to put it on your wall.
And then there's a few others. There's a few other prints as well.
Yeah, there's like 5 prints. This was the Country Girl. This was the first Country Girl we did. That's Brian Peterson. That book is sold out. Shannon Mayer. Also, this book is sold out. Yep.
This one.
This is Nei Ruffino. Again, we want to try and get some of the. We don't want to just do Dorothy on everything. So there is the Cowardly Lion.
And then this one, and this is probably one of the coolest. And I don't want you to say who it is. I don't want you to say who it is. People should know who this is. If you don't know who this is, we need to have a talk. I'm just saying that it's somebody very prominent, and there's been quite a few. And I know Nei worked on this book too. And there's somebody very prominent it was very close to Nei, and Nei does a lot of work for. So obviously, and then there's been Virgin covers of this book, I think, and there's been a variety of things. So obviously, you could say now who it is.
Yeah, this is a long sold out cover. This book's like almost 8 years old all by itself. This is J. Scott Campbell, Nei Ruffino colors. This book, if you can even find it, will be running probably in a couple $100 range. So again, we made prints so that people could get the art.
So what book was this from?
This was Legend of Oz #1, the second volume, #1.
I have a 9.4 of it, so CGC got it pretty cheap too, like $30. So there you go.
That's crazy. It's easily a $200 book raw right now if you can even find one. Because there were only 100 of them made.
It's one of those books. It's a really cool book. It's an awesome book to have. And no, mine is not for sale. So having said that, obviously this is a very cool book. And didn't know what I was necessarily buying beyond the fact that it was a J. Scott Campbell. I just loved the cover on it. And I love the cover on it. And it is so Western. It is the purest form of a Western, and Dorothy's just happens to be in it, is the way I describe it.
Yeah.
So
it's very Western. It's not like one of these. If you're concerned about what the interiors are, what's going on inside, it's not one of these fairy tales where all the lead characters are running around their underwear or anything. It is a gunfighter Western story with the magic of Oz blended into it, a little bit of steampunk blended into it. So yeah, it's for everyone. I mean, obviously there's like Western violence, gunfights, and bar fights and stuff, but it is basically for everyone, and that was part of our goal from the beginning too.
And then obviously I wanted to talk about the physical side, but there's a bunch of digital rewards. There is you get the books digitally. You get I think other things like the TikTok series digitally, and a few other things digitally of the Oz stuff. And then obviously, as you mentioned already, you could play catch up.
Sure. Yeah. If there's definitely digital not collectors, but digital readers. If digital is the way you want to go, we can hook you up. You'll get PDF, basically high resolution PDFs of the books. And if you want the books, we can get you the books too.
And so obviously whatever fancies your float can be achieved. Also, digital to some degree is cheaper sometimes than physical. Not everybody can, drop $25 on something, or not everybody wants to per se. And not everybody wants to read physical, as well as there's international readers. And international shipping is a bitch. It's a bitch. I know, because I did it once and I don't want to do it again in my eBay business. Not fun. And it gets very expensive, and obviously with things that are happening, and we can talk about the post office. I'd rather not, but I'm sure you're well aware, as am I, that in the last 6 months there's been 2 rate hikes. It's a whole instrumental cluster fuck, for lack of a better word, the entire shipping in the U.S. So appreciate that it's not costing you much money to ship, everybody, on your backing end. So obviously that's something that I want to mention. And then there's just a bunch of, stretch goals that are awesome.
Yeah, so stretch goals are basically free things that you get. So as we go through the campaign and we reach certain dollar amounts, in fact, we just crossed We just crossed 21,000 today, so we just unlocked another stretch goal. But basically, we have trading cards. Like this is the that's a sticker done by Bunley Young. There's the sawhorse. There are poker chips, all kinds of stuff. And they're just free. They're just free. You when you get your books, whatever books you're buying, you'll just get bonus stuff. It doesn't cost you anything else. It's just, hey, we've reached this extra level within our campaign, so we're throwing you a little bonus thank you. And that's pretty standard for all Kickstarter campaigns. How many get unlocked is, well, I mean, most people do them. It's just a matter of unlocking them. You know, not all of them unlock 4 or 5. We usually unlock at least about 8 different things.
I will say this. So there have been Kickstarters that I have backed that the stretch goals were not great, that the bonus goals weren't great, that like I felt like there was no effort put in.
Sure.
You put effort into this. You stickers. I mean, I think, is there a magnet to some degree? Or
yeah, the Keith Garvey, the first one you showed is a magnet. Yeah.
So we got poker chips, which is your thing. And obviously we got double-sided poker chips. You know, you have unlocked certain add-on bonus covers. And there's a variety of other stuff. And I actually feel like you put an effort that rewards me to back your project. You know, one of the things that as a Kickstarter, and this is just my version, and I would imagine people are similar to me, that I want good cover art, I want a good story, and I want some stretch goals that say, hey, thank you for backing my project and actually trusting me when there's 200 other projects that you can spend your money with and wanting to throw 25 to 50 bucks towards me or more. So that to me is an incentive for me to want to back your project. There is a potential that you're throwing me a magnet or a sticker or a poker chip. You know, and it doesn't sound like a lot, and I mean, this doesn't change my life, but it's almost like a thank you.
Sure.
And so that's how I view it, and that's what makes me want to say, hey, I want to back this project, is that I have 3 things and 4 things, and then there's like 10 other projects, and then whoever has the most, and I feel is bringing me the most value as a backer, and I feel like you have hit that nail on, like hammer on the nails. Hey.
Yeah, it is sort of a value proposition. It's like, yeah, I bought this book. Great, I'm getting the book. But, oh, now I'm getting cards. Now I'm getting poker chips. Now I'm getting magnets. Now I'm getting, you know, whatever it is. Last time we had I think it was the 8th stretch goal that we unlocked was a full-sized black and white copy of the comic, just virgin art. So you can see Carlos Reno's art just all by itself, the black and white line art. That was a stretch goal. So, you know, we want to get you guys stuff that, you know, makes sense to you, and is fun, and, you know, isn't just, you know, I don't know, here's whatever it is. I mean, whatever it is, there's all kinds of just weird things to get put in for stretch goals, but we try and make them as relevant as possible to whatever book we're doing. The poker chips were actually just a carryover, because we were doing those for Penny for Your Soul, because it's a Las Vegas story. So poker chips were like, hey, poker chips. But everybody was like, dude, you can do poker chips for Scheherazade? You can do poker chips for Oz? I'm like, I guess if you want them, then that's what we'll do. So it became this thing that people want to collect. So we keep doing them.
And then also what you did in the first day, and it was only for the first day, is you did like a trading card with a cosplayer. Shoot, I'm slipping her name.
Yeah, Victoria Page. We have the first, anybody who backed in the first 24 hours, which ended up being 300 backers, they're all going to get a cosplay trading card of her that she's going to sign for everybody. And that'll be thrown in for those first 300 people.
And so I like that too, because obviously that helped to fund a bunch of stuff and unlocked a bunch of stretch goals.
Yeah.
And that helped to really sort of set the tone, I feel, for the Kickstarter. And I think you funded in about 38 minutes, from my understanding.
35 minutes, our best ever, 35 minutes. Yep.
And so, I mean, I was waiting for this to drop too. And so I was super excited. I backed, obviously, when you were live. And I commented, and then you're like, oh, yeah, we got to do this. And in the middle of that thing, so you could actually go find that. And I think that live stream is on Big Dog Inc. from my understanding. So everybody can go find that moment when this all happened. But anyhow, I love the fact that that's sort of an early reward as well. So I think that is super important too. And I think a lot of people can actually take a page out of that, because an early bird rate doesn't do it for me. I don't really care. $3 doesn't move me on a book. It doesn't. A trading card, though, does. Because I'm like, oh, this is way cooler. It's also exclusive. It also kind of creates a niche community, I feel, and creates almost an exclusive club for those who jump on early. Yeah. And I think that it gives it more of an experience feel, in my opinion.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And Victoria was one of the first ever cosplayers for us. So, you know, as we can kind of help support her, she supported us. You know, it all works together.
Yeah, and then even that, because I like the fact that you have gone into cosplay, and that's becoming a bigger thing. I mean, we saw the Marvel and what they did in that realm, and how they had an entire cosplay, like 15, 16 cover run. And then obviously a bunch of other companies have done stuff. Dynamite does that extensively with a lot of people. And then now people that I know in the indie scene are doing cosplay covers. And obviously I think you've dabbled into it, and the fact that you have that now being thrown into it, and it's putting comics and indie comics and small press comics are now adapting to it more than the main big guys. And I think it's a really nice touch. I think it's also an evolution that needed to happen. Yeah. And so you're kind of one of the innovators to some degree of that.
Yeah, we had our first cosplay cover on Penny for Your Soul. Lessa Michelle was a devil girl for us. And then Victoria, we put her on a cover for Oz #4. She was on a cover actually for this last campaign as well. It was one of the unlocked covers that we had. So she's on that. We have Stephanie Taylor who cosplayed. She's on a Critter cover. Allison Lear also did an Oz Dorothy Gale. So she's on a pinup book that we did for cover art. So she's on the cover of that. So yeah, we definitely have a cosplay crew kind of across the country.
And so I love it, and I love the fact that we have a cosplay cover with this, and I think we had one for the last campaign, or you did at the very least. And so obviously a lot of cool stuff that is out there, and people get to see it, and people get to actually see a character that's in a book come to life and actually get a real sense of it. And I think it's a really nice touch on that. And so obviously this kind of leads me into my next question, where what is next that you can sort of hint at that's going to be unlocked, and how much further are we going to be going, and how much is this project funded at this point? And obviously, I guess the sky's the limit.
Well, yeah, I mean, as long as people are backing, it'll just keep going. You know, the next stretch goal is at 23,000. Like I said, we just did 21 today, so we're a couple thousand away from the next one. We're at 430 backers. So we need 70 more backers to unlock the 5th Land of Oz, Emerald City, which will unlock another cover that you guys can add on. It'll go as long as people are going. We'll be able to keep adding things and adding freebies and so on to the campaign as long as people keep coming in. You know, the last time that we did this, the last like 4 days, we went from we picked up almost 150 backers just in the last 4 days. So you know, we're by no means done as we're in our final 10 days right now.
And so even to talk a little bit about Inside Kickstarter, because you said in the first like 24 hours you got almost 300 backers, and that you obviously, and I don't know the number exactly, but that probably, because I would imagine most pledges and most tier rewards were around $25, give or take. And so obviously funding is pretty good in that circumstance, and a bunch of goals, and it obviously a lot of forward momentum. You know, so what was that like for you? Because obviously you said 35 minutes, your best record yet, and it also takes off a lot of pressure. It also creates a lot of forward motion, creates a lot of buzz. You know, obviously Kickstarter tends to algorithm it better if you fund very quickly. Also, it's the fact that people are waiting for it, because that doesn't just happen by itself. People saying, hey, I am waiting for this. And then obviously I think I got an email too about it, which helped. But the fact that people are saying, hey, I am waiting for this to drop so I can back it, is a really cool thing.
Yeah,
And
I mean, Kickstarter is like anything else. You can follow creators. So if you go on Kickstarter and you find me, you can follow me, and then every time I launch something, you'll get a notification like, "Hey, Tom has launched a new thing," and then you can go look at it. So even if you don't see notifications in Facebook or Twitter or whatever, if you're following me on Kickstarter, you'll get a notification every time we're doing something.
And so even the fact, though, that you funded in 35 minutes, I mean, how does that make you feel? Because that's an indicator that Big Dog Inc. is growing, that people really like this project. People really appreciate it. People want more. People don't want to wait. You know, the first book didn't even go out yet, and people are ready and willing and super excited to back the second book. I mean, that's kind of a crazy circumstance. And I mean, and I'm not doubting that you're not going to deliver, because obviously you're very good at it. You have an amazing track record, but that is real faith, and people are very trusting.
Sure.
And it's a very cool thing, and it shows. And I would imagine that, like, you're like, man, this is awesome to some degree. Because
of course, it's every time you see growth, I mean, that's great, especially since we don't have, like, really marketing is non-existent. We don't get to have TV commercials or any of that kind of stuff. We're just out doing conventions. We do these live shows like this. We're in Facebook groups. We're on Twitter. I mean, we just basically talk about it in social media. And so to be able to see just really organic growth. Hey, we did so many backers this time. We did so many backers this time. The last campaign we had 606. Well, what was it? 600. Here's my number. 612. We had 612 last time, which is only the second time we've crossed the 600 mark. And so we're already pacing well above that. So we could potentially break not just the Oz record on backers, but the all-time record on backers as well. It's great to see organic growth versus just, surges that there's a lot of people that, like, with social media and with Facebook and stuff, you can, like, buy fans and stuff. And it's like, hey, well, you can pay money and we'll put fans into your group. Like, that just doesn't mean anything, though, because those aren't people that are there because they want to be there. And when you see growth on the Kickstarter campaigns, and of course the money is good and it increases too, but really it's the backer count that you want. You want more people involved in the project. And really the only way to do that is organically. Just talk about it. People that have bought it previously, talk about it. It's just grassroots growth. And, we see it every time we do campaigns, a little bit more. And it's great. And we really appreciate everybody for continuing to support us.
It's a very big misconception on growth and what something looks like. And it's a whole big issue with influencers. And I think people are starting to wake up that companies won't look at me because I don't have a certain number on my Facebook page. Yet my retention rate and a variety of other metrics beats out people who have millions of followers on their Facebook page and Instagram.
Sure.
And you ask the question why. Well, it's very complicated, but the short answer to that is there are people who will follow you to the end of the earth, and those are the people who are going to buy this. Those are the people who are going to back it. And then there's people who might give out a like on Facebook, but they're not buying your product. And well, it's good to have some of those people, because every once in a while one of those people can be converted. But having 1 million people who don't want to buy your product and having 3,000 who do, I mean, at the end of the day, you want the people who are going to spend the money. And it is something that I think is people are starting to get it. And obviously it's very important to get it, especially when you're launching Kickstarters and even selling a book. You don't need to sell 1 million copies. You need to sell enough copies to the people who want it, and they want more and more and more and more. And especially if this is somebody's first time with Big Dog Inc., you want them to have a book that they're like, oh man, this is really beautiful. It's awesome. This cover is slamming type of experience, because then they're going to come back.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
And so that's just something I want to just get across, that I think that what you're doing is slow and steady wins the race. So obviously, and then Kickstarter also has just become a very different animal completely at the same time in the last 2-3 years. And so, I mean, I know we spoke about it the last time, but I do want to speak about it again because I think it is interesting. So I am not on Kickstarter. I'm not Kickstartered. I haven't gotten Kickstarted yet, if you will. I've been wanting to use that pun forever. May or may not try to launch something this year. It's going to be a very interesting product, and I will have no friends when I launch it by the time I am done, and everybody will either love me or hate me in that way. But anyhow, I digress right there. But how do you feel Kickstarter has changed in the era of COVID? Because there have been major changes to it, and I think it's both good and bad.
Well, I don't know if all COVID really did was make things move faster. Everything was going this way anyway, whether it's retail stores and distribution or Kickstarters, everything was going in this direction anyway. When COVID hit, it just sort of forced everything to change kind of overnight. And it was, I didn't back away last year. When it first hit, people were like, dude, you can't launch that Kickstarter in April because of COVID. And I'm like, yeah, watch me. And we had our biggest Kickstarter ever, right at the height of COVID starting. So, I don't know that normal as we understand it is really going to happen again. Like I said, people have been buying from Amazon. People are buying whatever online stuff. I mean, that's just where things are going. Brick and mortar is going to become more and more difficult to maintain. And COVID just sort of solidified a lot of that. So, buying online is never, for me, is never as fun as like going to the comic book store, buying it off the shelf, or, going to Toys R Us, which doesn't exist anymore, whatever. That's the experience that I like personally, but the general populace of the world is now just really, really used to buying things online. And so
do you think that even going off of Kickstarter, because I've noticed there's more projects on Kickstarter, I've also noticed there's better projects on Kickstarter.
Well, last year the general average up until last year was about 200-ish campaigns at any one time. A little bit more, a little bit less, roughly about 200. Last year, it spiked around May, June. It spiked to well over 300, and it was that way for the entire rest of the year until you got to December. There's a couple reasons for that. One is people that didn't do their campaigns earlier in the year were like, oh, okay, we're fine. We can do this. We'll dive in. The other reason is people saw it working. They were like, oh, it's still working. So, projects are getting funded. Even if they're only small, like, hey, we need $1,000. They're getting funded. The percentage rate of funding was super, super high last year. And so people just dove in. They were like, let's just do it, man. Let's go. And right now, so far through now, almost through April, the highest point we've been at is about 250. And right now it floats around 230 pretty regularly. So we might see another spike again towards the summer, where it might hit 300 again. But right now it's not out of control like it was last year.
Yeah. That's where I'm going, because one of the things, and this, I love economics. I excelled at economic classes in high school and in college. And obviously, if there is 300 projects, there's going to be more failures or unsuccessful funding. And
but there weren't. That was the crazy part. I 100% agree with you. I was like, dude, there are too many campaigns. This is not going to work. But as you watched things happen, and again, it wasn't like everybody was making 20 grand on a campaign. Some of these campaigns for Kickstarter are like, dude, I need $500. I need $1,000. But the percentage rate was so high, it was much higher than it is right now. I'm seeing way more failures now this year than I was seeing last year. It makes no sense. It's very, very strange.
Because I'm confused. Because technically, and I don't think my theory is wrong, and I think anybody who's interested in economics or basic economics would say, well, if there's more supply, than demand, all of a sudden things are going to have to go in, and that wasn't happening. But even this idea that, because what I've heard, and also is that people who would normally get 25,000 only got 21,000. And so
in some cases, we had a little bit of, like I said, though, the one in April was our biggest ever of any campaign. So, and then last year was very strange because we did like this trade paperback hardcover thing, which was a completely different, everything was very different for us in 2020. So it was very hard to kind of figure out how it was working.
So even with that, because obviously the landscape has changed, and obviously things that don't make sense occurred, and things that shouldn't make sense have also not made sense, and then it's all over the place. And we're in an unexperimented environment, and there's abnormalities in the Kickstarter environment. I think in 2018 it was more of a normal, straightforward. And we're also in a weird time in society where things are not stabilized. And not to attack anybody or not to get too political, but the idea here is that we're coming out of a pandemic. Obviously, the economy is good in certain areas and a disaster in others. The dust still has to settle from the entire COVID. I would say maybe 100 more million people, technically, if I'm very optimistic, are slowly getting vaccinated completely. And then, we're going to see where all the dust settles. And then, obviously, Kickstarter is not behaving like Kickstarter behaved in the past. And so what is that like for you? I think you answered part of it. But
for everybody that does it is going to be different. I mean, everybody, even when I do it, it's going to be different because when I do Oz and I do Ursa Minor, they're completely different books with completely different audiences. Now there's crossover, of course, because there's just BDI fans that just buy whatever we do. But from a general sense, if you buy Oz, that doesn't mean you're going to like Penny for Your Soul. It doesn't mean you're going to like Ursa Minor because they're completely different books. So even I see variation when I switch around to different books. But when we did Oz in January, like I said, we hit 600 backers for only the second time in our history. And I think it was our third highest dollar amount, but it was our second highest backer amount. So for us, it's just been keep going. It's just be consistent, get better, be better, because we've been late on a lot of our fulfillment for our campaigns for a number of reasons. But this year, the goal was, look, step one, everything has to be on time. And our goal this time was to ship this campaign, or January's campaign, in April. So that is our goal. We're going to have everything done by the end of April, and we will be on time. And then as we move into the next book, in July, we'll be shipping this book that's live now. We'll be shipping that in July as the next book is launched, and so on and so on and so on. So infrastructure is important. Learning Kickstarter is very difficult, not just like the actual website, but when you're done, like, okay, what do I do now? Now you have to ship all this stuff. Now you have to do tracking numbers. Now you have to do all this other work. And that's where a lot of people are going to fall out because they're going to do their campaign, even if they're successful. And they're going to be like, God damn, this is a lot of extra, side work.
It's called operations and logistics.
Yeah. And I don't want to do that anymore. So a lot of people just do the one issue and then they're gone.
There are people who have made billions of dollars because they are excellent at operations and logistics.
Sure.
And there are people who have given away billions of dollars in a company and they made a lot of money to somebody and they gave it away in equity to somebody for operations and logistics positioning. There's a company called The Learning Company. There's this little guy named Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. He gave away 50% of his company to somebody because they were expert at operations and logistics. And it turns out the company sold for $4.2 billion. But if he didn't give away the operations and logistics side, So all I'm saying to everybody is that if you suck at operations and logistics and you really want to run a Kickstarter, it might not be such a bad idea to bring somebody on who knows what they're doing in that sector.
For sure. Yes. 100%.
Making them a co-creator, even though they've never touched your book, might save you more money and might even make you money. Because it's just one of those things. Somebody who knows how to do this and how to ship and how to all that stuff. Preferably somebody who's a big eBay seller might help you tremendously. I'm just saying. Finding the right people. It's finding the who's, not the hows.
Yeah. The back end of Kickstarter is where it's legitimately difficult. I see so many people struggling with the front end. Like, how do I make this thing? How do I make this? I'm just like, dude, that's the easy part. Putting pictures in and writing what your book is about, that's the easy part. If you can't do that, you're going to hate it when you get to the end and you have to actually start fulfilling the books. That you're going to have a nightmare. So yeah, listen, I'm part of that. I wasn't prepared for a lot of that back end infrastructure. The fact that I was moving back and forth all the time wasn't helping from West Coast to Midwest. It's like it just wasn't happening. And so I've modified everything from last year into this year to focus on this infrastructure to get this freaking thing righted and on time, because that's what the backers deserve. And that's what we're aiming for this year.
It's important for a lot of reasons, because trust is a big thing. I've had a project delayed for 15 months. Miserable, no community.
Yeah, I know projects that have been years without fulfilling. I mean, literally like 3 to 4 years without fulfilling. It's crazy.
And I didn't touch Kickstarter for a good 2 years after that bad project. So it was such a bad experience as my first Kickstarter, and it was horrific. And the book came damaged. It was a bad experience. And person no longer is doing comics on Kickstarter for a reason, because legitimately everybody ransacked them out. They're an Indiegogo though, so just be wary. I'm just saying. I'm not going to say who it is, but just saying that not good in that regard. And then obviously we were speaking about cons, before a little bit, but I do want to talk about this, where obviously my position because of COVID has changed on cons. And I am not in the same circumstance as most people that I interview, where I am strictly a panelist. I am not getting paid. I am a fan panelist. And I also used to live in Washington, D.C., and I used to go to conventions in Washington, D.C. I now live in Connecticut, so I'm not going to be traveling to D.C. because going to cons is expensive. I don't get an invitation. I get a free ticket. And so I typically stay local, and I'm very selective on what I'm doing, and I don't know when I'm coming back. And obviously you being in a booth, and if you're invited and all that stuff, obviously how has your position changed on cons? Because it is a very different world at the moment, and the internet has changed a lot of things. And I think things were going here as you stated, but I think we got here 5 years faster, or even 10 years faster.
I dropped cons in 2019. I walked away from cons in 2019 before COVID even happened. I walked away from cons. We went from doing 20 a year to doing like 5. And there were a few of them that we paid for. There were a few that we were invited to. Anytime we're invited, if we can possibly do it, we'll do it. So if anybody's watching and you'd like Big Dog Inc. at your show, just shoot me a message. We're happy to work out some logistics. Even this year, I already got invited to 2 shows this year. I didn't even plan on doing shows, and suddenly I got invited to 2. And then there's a couple more that I'm looking at just doing just because I want to do them. But I walked away from cons because I just wasn't, I didn't want to, people don't understand that doing cons is super expensive. It's travel, it's hotels, it's food, it's bringing people with you, it's making product for the con. It's the booth cost. It's thousands upon thousands of dollars to do this. Obviously, if you're going to Artist Alley, it's a little bit different. Your costs are a lot cheaper. You can sit and draw and make your money back. But when you're trying to sell product versus selling Batman sketches, it's a whole different set of rules that you have to kind of run by to try and make your money back. I'll give
some numbers. I'll give some numbers because I run an eBay business. So I'll buy a comic for $25. On eBay, they charge me a 13% fee plus 30 cents. That's on everything, including the shipping. So I just sold a book yesterday, book for $65 with shipping. The shipping cost me $8, but it really didn't cost me $8. It cost me a little bit more than that because I had to drive to the post office. I had to pack up the item. I recycled Gemini shippers. So it saves me a little bit of money from my other orders on how I actually got the book from somebody else at a much cheaper rate. So now on that, eBay took, I think, my 65 drops to 61. Then I have to pay that pretty much $10 gone. And then obviously my buyer pays the tax on it. But then now I have to minus it, and now I'm walking away with like $14 in profit on the book. Now that's just me as an individual legitimately shipping from my house, and I have no employees. So for $14, and if I did that over the course of a bunch of product, but I didn't create the product, all I did was resell the product, and I knew what product to buy that appreciated in value. Now, I would imagine that if you're creating the product, you're printing the book, you have to outlay costs Stop me at any point that I'm wrong here on the business. You have to produce the product, which means whatever the interior work, the cover art is, or even if you took an old book and you recycled it and put it into a new cover exclusive, you got to pay for that cover to be done. Then you got to print it. Then you got to get it to the con. You got to make it. Then you got to sell it. You got to pay for the booth costs. And then you might have to pay a union to move your items, right? Like all of a sudden, you have a boatload of expenses that add up. And then your break-even point is $5,000 before you even touch your hotel food and you standing in your booth for 9 hours for 2.5 days.
Yeah, time is money too. That is one of the big things. Time is money too. And I was just like, I like being at the shows, but I just didn't want to chase the money anymore. And I had gotten an invitation to be part of Comic Book Shopping Network on Facebook. By Jesse James Christian and Jen King from Space Cadets. And they were like, yeah, why don't you just come on and do this live selling show with us? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so January of 2019, I changed everything by saying I'm not doing cons this year outside of the 4 or 5 that I got invited to. And everything else is going to be live sales online and Kickstarters, of course, and selling direct on my website and all that kind of thing. So that was it. I made the switch. And then when COVID came around in 2020, really nothing changed for me because I had already modified my entire business to function without leaving the house. And so it was fine for me. I mean, obviously last year was our 10-year anniversary. I would have loved to have been at cons and celebrated properly and made a big deal out of, hey, 10 years and all this. But, at the end of the day, it was fine. We built a new audience online. We kept building our audience on Kickstarter. People started finding us again on our website. Everything was growth last year. Maybe not have been as much as, it could have been, but everything was growth last year. And as we came into January, like we said, with this Oz book that we did in January, growth again. So, this isn't like incremental, like double it and then double it and then double it, but it is, again, that organic, hey, we did 500 backers, we did 600 backers, we did 700 backers, whatever. It's just that nice, steady, organic growth. That's all we ever want. That's it. That's all we ever want. And the better we can be at our business, like I said, like shipping the stuff on time, the better we can be there, the more that growth will continue to maintain.
Yeah, and I think the future is online. I think the future is on organic social media growth. I am also, in my opinion, I think paid growth combined with organic growth can be effective and marketing appropriately, depending on who you are. I think obviously doing shows like this are the future. I have a self-interest in that. I will say that, but I do think that this is super important. I think that this is also massively cheaper than they go into a con and can have.
Oh, sure. Even for the fan base, it's cheaper because they would have to travel and get a hotel and get a ticket and buy their food. So even for the fan base, it's cheaper. But the thing with the cons is that, and you can see it all through last year and into this year, people are desperate to get out of the house. They're like, dude, just let me go out of the house. So cons aren't going anywhere. They're going to modify, like anything else ever. They're going to modify. You're going to see a lot of them fall on the wayside.
I prefer the word evolution. I like the word evolution because if they don't evolve, they're going to die. And
yeah, more or less. But it's going to be less evolution, and it's going to be more people just can't do it. Because the evolution in comics is not something that really happens very quickly in any capacity. I mean, everything that you see coming out of Marvel right now is basically a rehash of what they did 10 and 20 years ago. Evolution is not a big thing on the comic book front.
What I think is happening in the con world is that they are now going both the virtual way, and they're selling virtual tickets to exclusive panels for
no one is buying virtual. They're buying virtual things again. But see, all of that, and this is the big part of all of this, all of that stuff that people are paying for, it's for Doctor Who and Star Wars and Marvel movie stuff. It has nothing to do with comic books. Zero. No one is paying for panels for me. No one is paying for panels for anybody that's doing comics. Maybe some of the bigger comic book dudes, J. Scott Campbell, whatever, they might be able to manage that kind of thing. But most of that stuff that you're seeing is all movie, TV star related.
Yep.
It is not about comics. So what I'm thinking you're probably going to see is a lot of Comic Cons are going to, well, and part of it is you have to see who's going to come out, because you don't know. Number one, every con right now has restrictions on people in the building. So even if you normally would have 50,000 people in there,
This is like my field.
That's going to be like cut in half, like instantly. So everything about your audience coming in is different. Will people even show up? So even if you're allowed to have 25,000, maybe 10,000 show up. So again, you'll have a drop there.
And then also it becomes the issue that if you're an artist, and I don't want to name any artists, but let's say you charge $250 for a commission, you could bang out 10 of them in a day, and that your table costs $300, your hotel costs $400 for the 2 nights you're there, and that you can pull in $5,000, but all of a sudden that's on 25,000 people coming in, and only 10,000 people are allowed to come in, or only 10,000 people show up.
That won't change for artists. That won't change, because that just all that means is shorter lines. That's it. It just means shorter lines. Most of these artists have 10 people that'll line up every single day for them. And that just means you'll have, instead of 20 people in line, there'll be 10 today. Instead of 20 people in line, there'll be 10 today. That won't change for artists. Artists have the easiest job on the planet.
It will change for like people who are charging for CGC signatures in that regard, because it's just volume number?
No, they'll always charge for that, because they want their piece of the pie.
Is not the charging. I'm asking the volume to make it economically viable.
Right now, CGC and CBCS are massively behind on what they're doing grading wise. So that's not going to change in the slightest.
So I don't think you understand what I'm asking. So I'll give an example. Scott Snyder has a huge line at a con that does 20,000 people. Mm-hmm. If that thing gets cut in half, now he's charging $15 a signature, but now that line is cut in half. It might not be economically viable for him to come. Therefore, it's not a draw for the con.
Possibly.
So that's where I think this gets very complicated, is that now there's not enough people, and then all of a sudden you're Big Dog Inc., and then now all of a sudden, there's just less foot traffic, which means that, for your breaking even point, getting back to the entire economics, it becomes much harder for you to break even or even grow your audience. And then
not necessarily. Smaller shows are actually better for Comic-Cons and for small press. Right. Now, if you're talking about like, hey, it's New York Comic Con and it's half the people. I mean, the thing is that every show, people go there for different things. There are a lot of shows that are very heavy movie oriented shows. Like they have a dozen movie stars there. Most of the people at that con are going to the movie people. Yeah. There are other shows that are very comic oriented. So the people that are coming there want the comics. So you just have to be very aware. And that's why I stopped doing so many shows. It's just like, I know where I can go and this is going to work. And I know where I'm going to go and it's not going to work. And if you're inviting me and I have no costs, then I'm willing to take the time risk, because then that's really all it is just a time risk for me to go and do the show. So, 25,000, if you have 50,000 people down to 25,000 is a crap ton of people. That is a lot of people. And most of those 25,000 are probably going to be there for a reason, versus having so many just stragglers just roaming around, like as I say, the circus goers who are just there to be like, we don't need them. They go home. We don't need those guys. They're sitting there. They're walking around with drinks in their hand. They got nothing in their hands, no bags, no nothing. They're just there to see the circus. So if we can scoop out all the circus people and just have the people that want to be there, fewer lines means they can get more. So even if you have fewer people in line, that means that they can probably get more signatures. Hey, if it's 1 per person, but now it's half the line, well, now it's 2 per person. All of that will make itself back up in those capacities. For me, it's just a matter of, I need to go to a show where people are going to be there whose minds are open to things beyond Marvel and DC and, movies and TV. I have to be in places where people are like, yeah, indies are cool. I want to see what Big Dog is doing. I want to see what Aspen's doing. I want to see what Zenoscope's doing. Those are the shows that I have to be at. And if those shows aren't what, if that's not what they are, I can't go to your show unless your show is comping me to be there, because then it's just time versus chasing money.
And also, I would imagine location matters, and also a variety of
Sure,
other
yeah, of course, because I can't go to Washington State and then the next week I'm in Washington D.C. That's an impossible trek.
And I would also imagine that if you had the choice, where obviously I don't know where you are in the Midwest, but if it's a 3-hour trip versus a 9-hour trip, that also probably factors into it as well.
Nah, I do 9 hours in a day driving, easy. Anywhere within about say 12, 14 hours, I can do 7 and 7. That's fine. Once you get out of that kind of 2-day segment, then I got to start being like, well, that might be too much. But anything within about a 2-day drive is pretty simple. And when you're in basically Michigan, you can hit like a dozen states in 2 days. So it's pretty easy to get around. It's not like you got to drive through Texas, which takes a whole day.
That is true. Texas is a big fucking state.
Yes.
It's a big state. Delaware is a short state.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. You can cut across Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania in 5 hours.
Not to mention that Michigan is certain areas of Michigan are very big on indie comics and very supportive.
The Midwest is good for indie comics in general, and I like it here. That's why I'm trying to get myself situated to stay here, so I don't keep going back and forth to the West Coast. There's lots of little shows here, which are great because little shows are awesome. That's one of the shows I'm doing is Monroe Pop Fest in September. That just got announced. So I'll be down there, and they just expanded theirs to 2 days. It usually is a 1-day show, but because of the COVID restrictions, they're going to open on Friday night and do like a preview night to help kind of spread some of the people out a little bit. So that'll be good. I'm looking forward to that.
And so obviously there's a lot of cool stuff happening, and it's going to be very interesting where cons go. I like smaller shows in general. I have a better time at smaller shows. I get better things at smaller shows. I find that, it's more about comics, and there's also more opportunity for buying stuff at smaller shows. I enjoy, and then some of my best experiences with comic legends like a Scott Lobdell or Joe Sinnott have been at smaller shows. And where else are you going to get a really quick sketch for $15 from Joe Sinnott? For $15, guys, if you don't know who Joe is, I'm just saying. But I digress right there. So obviously we've been speaking for about an hour and a half now, and I do want to give you an opportunity for self-promotion because obviously you're all over. Comic Book Shopping Network is one place where people can buy, obviously, Big Dog Inc., which is up in the link. My link is up there if you want to support this show. You click my link. I would appreciate it. But the best thing you can do for my show before I give you a chance to promote is share this interview. Like my page, share this interview. Super helpful. Send it to somebody that super helpful, as well as obviously everything that you're doing is up in the link. And I think that if people go to Big Dog Inc., that kind of directs people to other elements, the Facebook page, Twitter. I don't know where else you're at. Are you on Instagram?
Yeah, Twitter and Instagram are BDI Comics. And then if you go over to Facebook, just look up Big Dog Inc., you'll find the fan page. You can find me too. You're welcome to friend me up there. But yeah, we do live shows every Wednesday on the Comic Book Shopping Network, CBSN. Just go join the group. There's 3 questions just to make sure you're not, a bot. Just answer the questions and we'll get you in. And we do a show every Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern. And then occasionally we do live stuff just on my own page and even on the Big Dog page as well. We just kind of jump on and do little live segments from time to time there as well.
Yeah, so everybody go follow Tom. Go follow Big Dog Inc. Super important. Go buy stuff on Big Dog Inc. Obviously, the Kickstarter, really helpful. Links up in the description up above. So obviously back that. It's a really cool project. 2 more covers are being issued out in the next few days as add-ons. Obviously, that Princess vs. Zombie, unless I am mistaken, is still available to be purchased. That 360 cover is still available. And that's super limited to about 100 books. So I do want to give that. I think it's $75 for the set. It's a super cool concept. You're going to see it emulated in the next 5 years, a hell of a lot more. So that's kind of the original. It's a super cool book. It's a moment over 3 covers of the exact same moment from 120 degrees at a pop. And so obviously go support Big Dog Inc. Back this Kickstarter. Obviously, indie, super important to back indie projects and people that you like and projects that you like, because indie in particular does rely on fans to back it. And as I stated, and I'm going to reiterate it, Kickstarter is the way to do it. And then even going further off of that, if you want to catch up and somehow you just don't want to do it through the Kickstarter, you can catch up through the website, as well as if you like other things or you see other things and check out Big Dog Inc. and you like a particular project, you could actually buy it on BigDogInc.com. So that's we
have a web store. So if there's something that you want right now, just grab it and go. Everything that we do on Kickstarter is new stuff. So the new issue, here it is. It's on Kickstarter. And then whatever happens to be left when we're done and all the backers have their stuff, that's the stuff that goes on the website. And then you guys have a chance to get it.
So that's obviously the way you should support financially. And if you're in a tough position because COVID left you high and dry, what you should do, and money's tight, please make sure, A, you're taken care of, make sure your family's good, wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, make sure your dog's all right, make sure your cat's all right. If you got a goldfish, ask your goldfish how it's feeling. Super important. You never know, it might respond to you. Anyway, if you got kids, also make sure they're good. Also make sure your rent, mortgage is paid for. Make sure you're good for the next month after that as well. And if you're in that circumstance, follow on social media. That means following on Twitter, following on Facebook, commenting on Facebook, watching the lives, even just liking.
Yeah, even on the Comic Shopping Network, we have a big group of people, and some people just come in and just hang out. It's just it's a live sales show, but it's just fun. We're just goofing around. It's like, hey, here's a book. Who wants it? It's $10. Somebody calls it, whatever. But we sit there and the group talks to each other. They talk about stuff they found on eBay. They talk about stuff they've done for the day. It's just a hangout spot. And then if you want to buy, cool, but there's zero pressure to buy anything. Just come join the group and hang out. You are more than welcome. And
also share it in that case, because you never know that you might be sharing it. Or if I share it on my personal page, I have 4,000 people liking my personal page. Somebody might say, hey, you know what? This is awesome. I'm looking for some comic books. Boom, I might have just got somebody else a sale in that group. And so sharing actually does matter. And so you might say, oh, well, I'm just sharing it. I'm not doing anything. You're actually doing a huge service. And even with the Kickstarter as well, you never know. Sharing it can make a big difference, because somebody might be like, hey, I love the Wizard of Oz. This looks awesome. And then they back the project. It's super important to share things, and it makes a massive difference. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And so on that note, I'm going to give you the final word on anything you would like to say or have to say or want to final promote, or anything you want to take it away with.
Yeah, I mean, that we talked about most of it there. Like we said, Legend of Oz ends in, today. After today, it'll be 10 days left. So you got about 10 days to get involved. It ends on May 1st, 11:45. So you got plenty of time to check it out and get involved. May 22nd is World Goth Day. And we'll be bringing our goth characters back with it. Last time we had Goth Day,
right? Full eyeliner, right?
That's right. Last year we just did a bunch of variant covers, but this year we're actually doing a goth story. So it'll actually be a full 20-page goth rendition of Big Dog Inc. with some covers. So that's going to be really fun.
And then in July, who did the cover last year for Goth Day?
We had 5 of them. So there was Nei Rufino, there was Steph Wilson, Justin Hunt, David Fought, and who's the 5th one? MR Gunn did the catnip cover. So we'll be announcing our Goth Day stuff for this year pretty soon, but we're still focusing on the Kickstarter, so we need to stay there. But May 22nd will be Goth Day, so it's a super fun sort of like Elseworlds, with DC. So we've got Elseworlds for Big Dog Inc. And then in July, we're doing a crossover event that will be on Kickstarter with Totally Rad Comics and Jim E. Noble. So we're doing a summer camp special edition where we're going to have 2 dueling camps that will be Kickstarters. So we're both going to launch at the same time. We'll have my books, we'll have his books, and then on week 2, it'll be the Summer Camp Olympics, and we will have add-on covers that will connect. So it'll be like swimming, and we'll have his character swimming and my character swimming, but the comics will actually connect together like they're competing against each other. So we're going to be doing that in July, which will be super, super fun. And then in September, I'll be doing another crossover with CB Zane and his Into the Suck book. We're doing a Cat Girl of Mars, the Critter spinoff, crossing over with Into the Suck. So that's the next 4 or 5 months in a nutshell.
A lot of fun stuff. So obviously,
For sure.
people, and I'm taking away the final word here, but I think it's relevant. Follow on Twitter, follow on Facebook, and you'll be pretty much kept informed of all of this stuff that's out there. And that's why this is super important to do that. And so, I think that that's really the most important thing. That obviously back to Kickstarter, everybody, and follow on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and you won't really miss anything. And I don't know if you have an email list too yet, but
we do. You can actually get on the email list if you go to the Facebook page, the Big Dogging Facebook page. There's a button that'll say join the email list or whatever it says. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that'll keep everybody informed as well. So obviously those 3 things, back to Kickstarter, like the Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram, and get on the email list. And I think that'll keep you informed. If you like anything you heard, or if you completely forget everything else, do those 3 things and you'll be perfectly fine.
You got it.
So I think that that's a wrap, unless you have anything left or you want to add beyond that.
No, we're good to go.
And on that note, we're done.